Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. When you cast your vote, when you proudly participate in what we call democracy, do you really believe you hold power? Or do you sometimes feel, deep down, that no matter who wins, nothing truly changes? That the world keeps spinning on the same rails, controlled by forces you can't see, bound by rules you didn't write, and guided by hands you'll never shake? If that thought has ever crossed your mind, you're not crazy, you're not cynical. You're seeing through the surface of something that was never as clean, noble, or empowering as we were taught to believe. And Plato, 2,400 years ago, already warned us that democracy can easily become a polite form of dictatorship. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: democracy doesn't guarantee freedom, it guarantees the illusion of choice. Plato, in his Republic, describes democracy as a seductive system where freedom seems limitless. Everyone believes they have a voice. Everyone feels entitled to do whatever they wish. At first glance, it looks like the fairest, most liberating system imaginable. But Plato also saw how this freedom, unchecked, doesn't lead to harmony. It leads to chaos. When every desire is equal, when every voice demands to be heard, society becomes a battlefield of competing interests. And in the midst of that chaos, people cry out for order. And what happens when a population, tired of confusion and division, begs for order? They accept authority. They welcome strong leaders. They submit, sometimes even willingly, to a ruler who promises stability. That, Plato argued, is how democracy, left to itself, transforms into tyranny. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, do you not see shadows of this in our own world today? Think about how politicians present themselves. Every election cycle, you are told you have the power to choose your future. But do you? Or are you choosing between carefully curated options, pre-approved by money, institutions, and hidden power structures that decide long before you walk into the voting booth? This is the paradox of modern democracy. It pretends to put the people in control, while in reality, it funnels their choices into narrow lanes. You are allowed to pick the flavor, but not the recipe. And that is not freedom. It is control disguised as participation. Nietzsche once wrote, "Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule." What he meant was that when people unite under banners of ideology, their capacity for independent thought dissolves. Democracy thrives on this madness. It pushes you into camps, into sides, into us versus them. And once you're caught in the game, you don't even realize you're no longer free. You're just playing your assigned role. Let me tell you a story. In the 20th century, a man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German pastor and philosopher, witnessed firsthand how a society could collapse under the weight of its own illusions. Germany in the 1930s was, by every outward appearance, a functioning democracy. People voted. They believed they had control. But Bonhoeffer warned about what he called the stupidity of the masses. Not stupidity as in lack of intelligence, but as in the willful refusal to question, to think critically, to resist propaganda. He wrote that stupidity is more dangerous than malice, because while malice can be fought and exposed, stupidity is immune to reason. And it was this kind of stupidity, this blind trust in the system, this faith in appearances, that allowed democracy to slide into dictatorship almost overnight. Does that sound familiar? Look around. The slogans may have changed. The leaders wear better suits. The propaganda has become digital, sleek, and addictive, but the underlying psychology is the same. We like to think dictatorships are loud, brutal, and obvious. But the most effective dictatorships are polite. They don't silence you with guns. They drown you in noise. They don't forbid your choices. They overwhelm you with meaningless ones. Bread and circuses, endless entertainment, infinite scrolling. You're free to speak, but your voice disappears in the void. You're free to choose, but only from the menu they hand you. This is what Machiavelli hinted at when he said it's safer for a ruler to be feared than loved, because love is fickle, but fear endures. Today, rulers don't need to inspire fear with violence. They inspire fear with uncertainty, with economic instability, cultural division, and the constant reminder that without their control, society would collapse. And so, you cling to the very system that imprisons you, because it feels safer than the chaos outside of it. Now let's make it even more personal. Think about your own life. Do you sometimes feel like you're living in a system of constant distraction? That your attention is being pulled, manipulated, harvested, not for your growth, but for someone else's gain? That's not an accident. That's the architecture of polite dictatorship. Because a population that is truly free, mentally, emotionally, spiritually free, would be uncontrollable. But a population that is numbed by comfort, pacified by entertainment, and divided by politics, that population will never rise up. It will argue endlessly about left and right, red and blue, but never question the walls closing in on all sides. Plato saw this long ago. He believed true leadership should come not from popularity, but from wisdom, not from those who want power, but from those most reluctant to hold it. But democracy rewards the opposite. It elevates those who crave attention, those who can manipulate crowds, those who are willing to say whatever it takes to win. And when the masses choose leaders this way, Plato warned, they choose their own undoing. But here's the twist. Maybe the real problem isn't them. Maybe it isn't the politicians or the elites or the hidden structures. Maybe it's us. Because democracy, at its core, reflects the people. If the people are divided, shallow, distracted, and easily swayed, then the system will mirror that. If we want leaders who are wise, we must first become wise ourselves. If we want truth, we must first stop feeding on lies. And maybe that's why Plato's warning still cuts so deep, because he wasn't just describing democracy, he was describing human nature. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a choice, though not the kind you're used to hearing about, not the choice between parties or candidates or slogans. The real choice is whether you will remain asleep inside the polite dictatorship or wake up to see it for what it is. It means asking yourself hard questions. Am I truly free, or am I comfortable in my chains? Am I thinking for myself, or am I just repeating what I've been told? Am I brave enough to see through the illusion, even if it leaves me alone, even if it strips away the comforting stories I was raised to believe? Because the truth is, democracy may very well be a polite dictatorship, but dictatorships only endure as long as the people consent to them. And the moment even a small group of individuals decide to think for themselves, to live with integrity, and to refuse the game, that's when cracks appear in the facade. Plato once imagined a world where most people lived chained in a cave, staring at shadows on the wall, believing them to be reality. But he also believed that one person could turn around, walk out, and see the light. That one person could return and awaken others. Maybe that person is you. So the question remains, will you keep staring at the shadows of polite dictatorship, or will you risk turning around to see the truth? The answer, as always, is not out there. It is within you.